Isn't that cute? Thanks, Devin. That's lovely. Okay. Good morning, everyone. I'm here this morning with my friend Mustafa Farouk, who is the CEO of the National Council of Canadian Muslims, and we have some exciting news to share with all of you. In June, as we recall tragically, we all shared the heartache, the anger, the grief of the horrific murder of the Usfall family in London, Ontario, victims of Islamophobic terrorism, acts of hate that were horrifying to all of us. And of course, in the wake of that attack, many of us went to mourn with the community, and we heard very clearly from Muslim families and faith leaders that they need more than than just words from officials, from politicians and officials who are elected. That being there to support the community was welcomed, and they were very happy with that, but it wasn't enough. That words and sentiments were not enough. They actually need action. So today I'm thinking about Fayez Afzal, who of course folks might know is the little boy that survived the attack. And what we want is for Fayez to know that Ontario is his home, that he's welcome here, that he's loved, and that he's safe. We want him and all Muslim children to grow up knowing that we did everything we could possibly do to make sure of that. No one should be scared to go for a walk in their neighborhood or community wearing a hijab, or fear worshiping at their masjid, wondering if somebody is going to come in and attack the community while in prayer. Hate-fueled actions of terrorism have to stop in Ontario. Islamophobia, white supremacy, these things are on the rise in Canada, and we all know it. They're on the rise here in Ontario. And that's why the NDP has partnered with the National Council of Canadian Muslims to introduce legislation that responds to the call of the community, that takes action against Islamophobia. I want to say that I'm very proud to be able to undertake this this move here in Ontario. It's long past due that action on Islamophobia takes place in our province. And I want folks also to know that I have reached out to other party leaders asking directly for their support of the bill that we'll be tabling shortly. Because what we want is for everybody to join us. Everybody needs to join us, moving beyond words to action. And that's what this bill that we will be tabling is all about. So on that note, I'm going to pass it to Mustafa, and then we'll take any questions that that folks might have. Mustafa?
Thank you, Andrea. My name is Mustafa Farouk, and I am the CEO of the National Council of Canadian Muslims. Today, I am pleased to join the leader of Ontario's NDP, Andrea Horwath, as she commits to working with us to bring forward a piece of model legislation called the Our London Family Act. I'm here today so that I do not have to be here again. I'm here today because I shouldn't have to be. I'm here today because in the last 16 months, we've had 5 people killed by murderers who are allegedly motivated by Islamophobia and white supremacy. I was there on the night that Mohammed Aslamzavis was killed in front of the IMO Mosque in Etobicoke on September 12th, 2020. I didn't know Mohammed Aslamzavis that well. I met him during the summer of 2020 when he was handing out food to the needy. He was a man who thought that I might need some food. I was wearing sweatpants on that day. And so he called me, kindly greeted me, and tried to take care of me. That was the kind of man that Muhammad Aslam Zabis was. He was a man who insisted on bringing good to others. Only a few months later, I was back at the IMO, and this time I came to find the body of the man that I had just started to become friends with. I will never forget the flashing lights, the confusion, what it meant to see the community crowd around the place that they called home. And too many beautiful folks have been taken from us in the last year. I can't say the names of the London family because it's too painful. But I'm here today because the time for change is now. It is not tomorrow. It cannot exist as a platform promise. Ontarians are getting killed because of Islamophobia, and that needs to stop. Today, we are here to talk about the Our London Family Act. When I was reflecting on what led us here today, I cannot help but think about family. I think about my son. I think about his baby blue eyes, his smile, a smile that I swore to protect. This draft legislation is for my son. It is for a boy who is growing up now in London without a father. It is for a woman in Etobicoke who is now serving and surviving without her father. This is for all the children. This is for all of the adults. This is for our London family. Because we would do anything to protect our families. And that is why we are proud to stand beside Leader Horwath today, a commitment I will also make to offer to every leader of every political party that I will stand with them. The Our London Family Act, a draft piece of model legislation, proposes key and common sense changes to the way that we challenge Islamophobia in Ontario. There are 6 key premises of the Our London Family Act. Firstly, the Our London Family Act would introduce changes in our educational system. This was a call that we heard across the province. As we see a rise in Islamophobia, we need to make sure that young people are growing up with educational resources to help them understand and confront Islamophobia. Secondly, we are calling for a dismantling of white supremacist groups in the province. The Our London Family Act, if introduced and passed, would prevent white supremacist groups from registering as societies and would further serve to prevent acts of intimidation on provincial property, as well as intimidate worshippers at synagogues, mosques, and gurdwaras. Thirdly, the Our London Family Act, if introduced and passed, would enshrine a provincial hate crimes accountability unit. Fourthly, the Our London Family Act would bolster the scope and strategy of the Anti-Racism Directorate. Fifthly, the Our London Family Act would encourage far more minorities into the provincial public service. Lastly, the Ontario-London Family Act would increase the limitation period for those seeking to file human rights claims in Ontario. Let us be clear. What is in this draft model piece of legislation, these are common sense changes. Every party in the aftermath of the London attack committed to action. Now, it's simply about political will. The proposed bill, the proposed act, is a culmination of what we heard in consultations with hundreds and hundreds of Ontario Muslims across this province. We need to see action. We need to see it now. We need to see this legislation entered, and we need to see it passed before the spring election. And as our 3 parties prepare for the election in the spring, our call is simple. No more violence. I can't keep showing up at funerals. Our communities cannot wait until after this election for change. We are calling on all our leaders across party lines. Let's work together to make change a reality. Thank you.
Thank you, Mustafa. If there's any questions that folks might have, we're happy to take them, myself or Mustafa.
Exactly does preventing white supremacist groups from registering from society as societies dismantle them?
Did you want to take that one? I'll start and then I'll send it over to Mustafa. What we're trying to do is indicate to groups who are coming together to espouse hatred and undertake Islamophobic acts and behaviors, that it's not something that this province, that the people of this province accept, and that we're not going to simply stand by and be silent while they spread hatred and distrust and division. That's not what we're about in this province, and so by putting together that kind of prevention of the registering of these groups, it is a clear indicator that that kind of behavior is not acceptable in Ontario. Mustafa?
I think that's accurate.
The thing is, like, they know that they're always being condemned by different quarters. Surely they know that what people think that what they're doing is wrong, but that doesn't really stop them.
Well, I mean, the other thing is if they're establishing groups that are registered organizations that can then perhaps raise money or do those kinds of things, that's then a problem. So that would be something that would, I think, that kind of action that we would take would prevent them from being able to further legitimize their existence and perhaps prevent them from having the opportunity to become stronger and larger and fundraise and those kinds of pieces.
Is there a definition of what counts as a white supremacist group in this legislation?
So in fact, we have all of this work is with the Ledge Council right now. That's why we haven't announced the actual date when we'll be bringing the bill into the legislature, because it's quite complex, quite complicated, and we want it to be perfect. We want it to be able to. We want it to stand up, and we want it to be effective. We don't want it to be rhetorical. We want it to be action oriented. Did you want to add anything? Or? Okay.
That's accurate. Can you talk a bit more about this idea of stopping intimidation on provincial property? How does that work?
Well, what we have, you know that we already have dealt with some of the challenges around COVID-19, and we put our safety zone bill forward to try to prevent that kind of harassment. But a public place like the Legislative Assembly of Ontario, like government buildings where people attend to receive services, shouldn't be a place where acts of intimidation or racism or Islamophobia are allowed to occur. Those services, those locations, those buildings are places where every single Ontarian and every resident here should be able to attend, receive the services they want, participate in whatever civic functions are being undertaken in those locations without the fear of being attacked, of being verbally abused, of having to face some kind of hate-fueled symbol. This is a principle that I think is important. Nobody should have to face those kinds of things, and one place that we certainly have significant control over is government buildings, because they're the responsibility of the province of Ontario. So that's the kind of the thought behind that. I don't know if... Sure.
I'll just add on to that at the first anniversary of the January 29, 2017 Quebec City mosque shootings, outside the Ottawa Muslim Association, a mosque that or rather Jami Omer, a mosque in Ottawa, a mosque that I regularly pray at, there were people who fired guns who are associated with Atom Waffen, the white supremacist group. And this reality of terror, of criminal intimidation, of things under the criminal code, is simply a reality that unfortunately has become far too common. Here in downtown Toronto, We've had mosques that have consistently, for months, faced white supremacist marches right outside their doors. For the vast majority of Ontarians, that's not a reality they live with. But it is unfortunately a reality that Ontario Muslims have lived with. It's unacceptable. It needs to stop.
Okay, we're going to go to the phones for a couple questions.
Ladies and gentlemen on the phone, as a reminder, if you do have any questions, press *1. Your first question comes from Richard Southern with City News. Please go ahead.
Hi, Andrea. Good morning. City News was first to report on Friday that the vaccine booking portal may have been hacked into. Some people reported receiving some fraudulent text messages after signing up for their shots. The Solicitor General said today that there is an investigation ongoing and that she has full confidence in the security of the portal. What do you think? Do you think Ontarians should have confidence in the safety of this portal, Andrea?
I think it's up to the government to dig as deep as they possibly can and leave no stone unturned to assure people that, in fact, their information is secure. That's the government's job, and I hope that not only do they do that investigation, but do it in a way that people have confidence in the outcomes. I think that's what people need. They need to be assured that the government's getting to the bottom of this.
That's great. Thank you very much, Andrea. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Your next question comes from Jack Hahn with Queen's Park Briefing. Please go ahead.
Hey, Jack.
Hi, Andrea. I just wanted to ask about Belinda Karahalios, who is tested positive for COVID-19 on the 19th and was last in Queen's Park on the 16th. I was just wondering if any of your MPPs or staff have been contacted by legislative staff about that.
Not to my knowledge. It's disappointing to hear, but it's clearly what public health folks have been telling us for a very long time and what the experts have been saying. The virus is still out there, and it's favored locations to go are places where folks are not vaccinated, and so it's concerning, absolutely. I haven't heard, though, through tracing or otherwise, that any of our MPPs have been impacted. Our House Leader did send around the notification, I believe it was Friday or Saturday, that this had occurred. So I'm sure folks are very careful about monitoring their whether they're having symptoms or otherwise. So.
And I was wondering what you thought this says about Queen's Park's current safety measures.
Well, it's troubling, to be frank. It's troubling because we do get screened every day, and we are required to wear our masks, and we have reduced presence in terms of bodies inside the legislature. Having said that, we also know that there are people that carry the virus asymptomatically, and so I wouldn't want to make any assumptions at all in terms of the screening and/or Ms. Karahalios. But certainly, I think the lesson here is that the virus is still amongst us. It's people who are not vaccinated that are most at risk, and I would just reiterate my call for people to get the vaccine and let's once and for all lick this virus and move on with life.
Do you have a follow-up?
Oh, that was my follow-up. I'm good. Thank you.
There are no further questions on the phone.
Okay.
Okay, let's wrap up.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. I can't believe I said lick this virus. That's kind of gross. I know you know. Thank you very much, Mustafa. Thank you so much. We're going to go out this door because that's the protocol.